And be streaming, and the rockets red bell, the bombs singing there, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you so much. Now, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. What a treat. With that, we will go on to the first item on our agenda, which is always the most fun part, accolades. And Mr. Scarpino, I'm actually moving you from public comment, if that's okay. And I would like you to take the podium for the first accolades. Mr. Scarpino is the chair of the Bristol Christmas Festival Committee. And he wanted to make a comment recognizing the district chorus groups and their directors for their contributions to this year's festival.
Madam Chair, thank you very much, and welcome to 2023 new school committee members. My name is Dave Scarpino. I am the chair of the Bristol Christmas Festival Committee. With me in the back is Laura Scarpino, who is our secretary, and Mike Riley, who is our vice president. This year, we wanted to make a focus of our festival and our grand illumination, the children of this community. We wanted to make sure, if you don't mind, I'm going to stand sideways so I can talk to the kids and the parents. And we wanted to make sure that we let the community know what a great system we have, dedicated teachers that we've got, and talented children that we have. So we did the grand illumination, and Susan Winterbottom Shade, I invited her to come in with her choral group. She came in with 100 kids. Trust me, I panicked for the moment, saying, how are we going to get 100 kids in and out of the building? But we did it. They did a fabulous job. David's choir sung for us for the grand illumination. Chris Lambert had some of his kids there too. And then the day of our festival, Susan again stepped forward and had some of the children sing. We're really so proud, and I think all the parents should be, the school administrator should be, school committee should be, because it shows the good that we have in our schools. It shows the talent that we have in our schools. And I think sometimes we focus on a lot of other things when we should focus on the kids and their development. We put this together, and to show you the collaboration and the bringing together of community, Roger Williams University stepped up and they helped us on 4 different fronts. We invited all of the dance studios from the community, and they also stepped forward. So it was an opportunity for us not only to do something good for the community, but to do it with our children. And I just want to thank you for allowing us to come here. Thank all of you back there. David, leadership, beautiful. Susan, thank you very, very much. And we're very proud of all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Scarpino.
My daughter Laura just gave me the eye. She gave me the eye roll back here. We also had Lauren and Jetty. She worked with the Arts Honors Society, and they put together a coloring book for us that we gave out to the children. So again, the arts community helped us too. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Scarpino. And that was just a small representative group. As you heard mentioned, we have more than 100 students in the chorus. So just a shout out to all of our music groups, the Rockwell Chorus, Gutierrez Chorus, Colt Andrews Chorus, Mount Hope's Vocal Ensemble, and Mount Hope Symphonic Band for taking part in all of the activities that happened over the holidays. In addition, of course, to our wonderful staff, Susan Winterbottom, David Lauria, and not here tonight, Carrie Thurber and Christopher Lambert. And just, although this was our Bristol shout out, I do want to also notice that we did also do many things in the town of Warren. So a shout out to our Hugh Cole Chorus, Elizabeth St. Pierre, who's our choral director there, and the KMS Band and Chorus, and Mr. Arsenal. So although no one's here from Warren to recognize them, I'm proud to recognize them. So we've had some really great contributions on both sides over the course of the holiday season. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, guys. Now we are moving on to the next accolade, which is for Bonnie Dion for her heroic efforts at Hugh Cole Elementary School in December 2022.
So if Mr. Grimsey, the principal, could please go to the video.
Hello, I'm Mr. Grimsey. I'm the principal at Hugh Cole School. I'm very delighted to be here tonight to introduce Bonnie Dion. She's the heart and soul of Hugh Cole. She is passionate as she is unpretentious. She is kind as she is gruff. And she's a little loud. She can command a room. Most days, that's the cafeteria, where she rules. I find myself taking orders from her all the time in the cafeteria. Things always work out better when I do. And I know Claire Steinmetz feels the same way. Her mother is here with us tonight. And what she did for her is something that none of us will ever forget. It was no surprise to me when I heard that it was Bonnie Dion that leapt to the fore and immediately sprang into action. And with efficiency and alacrity, she saved Claire's life. During her interview on Channel 12, not all of what she had to say made it onto the 12 o'clock Channel 12 news. But true to herself, her thoughts were not of herself. She encouraged everyone out there to get trained in CPR and first aid, and she asked everybody to thank a veteran. Ladies and gentlemen, Bonnie Dion.
Thank you, Bonnie. And next, Superintendent Riley is going to present to the kids who had perfect RICAS scores.
Yeah, so this is a wonderful night of accolades. It's really exciting. So we have this evening some students who had perfect scores on their RICAS, some in ELA, some in math, and someone with both. So we're really excited to recognize them. And if their principals, I think most of them are here, could come up and also join them so we can have a lovely photo op up here. If I could have Ian Texera from Hugh Cole Elementary. Ian received a perfect score on his math RICAS. Next, we have Kaya Brown from Kickamuit Middle School. And Kaya received a perfect score on her ELA. Oh, can I keep you up here, Ian? We're going to wait and have a whole group shot. Yeah, just stay there.
Good job, Ian.
Stay there, please. Please. Nathaniel Bagg, who's at the high school now, but was at Kickapoo Middle School when he received a perfect math and ELA rank. Next, we have Kayla Rocha from Colt Andrews Elementary School, who got a perfect math RICAS score. Next, we have Summer O'Brien from Colt Andrews Elementary School, who also got a perfect math RICAS. And last but not least, Cascadia Dawson from Rockwell Elementary School, who got a perfect ELA rank. Bravo. Excellent. Thank you. Now you're not off the hook, kiddos. You got another year of RICAS coming up, so let's see if we can match that up again for next year.
Congratulations, everybody, to the kids, their teachers, and of course to their parents. And thank you for being here. Now we'll move on to the public comment section of our meeting. As usual, 3 minutes per speaker, 15 minutes total. I would remind you that this is a meeting of the school committee taking place in public. Therefore, if you could keep your comments to what's on the agenda, we will actually be able to respond. And no mention of specific kids or personnel. I believe after Dave Scarpino, I presume Mr. Scarpino is all set. So we have Mr. Hewitt. If you could start by introducing yourself and saying where you live, Mr. Hewitt.
Good evening. My name is Pete Hewitt. I'm from Bristol, Wendy Drive in Bristol. At the last meeting, I mentioned the fact that Hillsdale College had come out with a 1776 history and civics curricula that the college had offered to any public school district in the nation free of charge if they were interested in receiving it. And I asked them to provide me with brochures, introductory brochures to their curriculum. They sent me a bunch. So with your permission, Madam Chair, I'd like to distribute these to the members of the committee and the superintendent.
If you just want to hand them over there, then we can pass them down.
Thank you. The only other thing I wanted to mention is at the last meeting, I also mentioned the fact that when you look at your consent agenda and the different policies, I have trouble finding on your website what those policies represent. And on your agenda tonight, there's policy BDE for approval. When I looked on the website, the only thing I could find on policy BDE is a student discipline hearings. The chairperson shall call to order a hearing board composed of a minimum of 3 school committee members. All school committee members are welcome to participate and vote. The decision of this hearing board shall be binding on the entire school committee, but it doesn't provide any meat, any substance in terms of what that policy is. And I'm wondering if that's a deficiency on the policy on the website, or is it something more to policy BDE that you seek to approve? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Now we move into item 7 on the agenda, which is a presentation from our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Diane Sana, on the district report card. As at the last meeting, just during this presentation part of the meeting, after the presentation, and once the school committee members have had a chance to ask their questions and make their comments, we do welcome questions and comments from the public, only pertaining to the content of this presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sana.
Thank you. Good evening and congratulations to our students and our families and our music educators for their accomplishments. This evening we have our annual presentation of the school report cards for the Bristol Warren schools based on the RIDE, Rhode Island Department of Education School Accountability System. So the slide shows us the components of the accountability system. It uses a variety of performance measures to determine an overall star rating for schools, with 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. The accountability system also identifies areas for improvements for schools. The goals of the school accountability system. The system was updated in 2018 and again in 2022. Additional updates are planned for future years as part of RIDE's approved multi-year accountability plan that was submitted to the U.S. Department of Education under the Every Student Succeeds Act. So the school accountability system enables Rhode Island Department of Education, schools and districts to focus on and address achievement gaps, document and learn from schools that are making great progress, review information that raises questions for further investigation, and identify schools that need additional support and attention. All of the school report cards for the entire state are available on the Rhode Island Department of Education website, as well as additional information about the accountability system. Next, we'll talk about the specific measures that are used to evaluate school performance. There are 3 buckets, so to speak: academic performance, student success, and college and career readiness. Under academic performance, that is determined through achievement based on 2021 and 2022 state assessments, and that includes the RICAS assessment, the DLM, which is the dynamic learning map, and the SAT results. It also includes growth, 2 years of RICAS or state assessment data. English language proficiency growth is also factored in, and that's 2 years of data. That's for students who are English language learners. And soon to be included will be proficiency on the science assessment. Under student success, that's based on student chronic absenteeism, the percentage of students more than 10% who are absent more than 10% of school days, teacher chronic absenteeism, the suspension rate for the school, and the percentage of students who earn a top score on the state assessment, as we celebrated here this evening. Under college and career readiness, that is based on 4-, 5-, and 6-year graduation rates. There's also the graduate proficiency rate. That's the percentage of students achieving the commissioner's seal. Diploma Plus, which is the percentage of students who have earned 1 or more college credit or credential. And this includes the seal of biliteracy and the pathway endorsement, which is a CTE industry credential that students earn, as well as giving points for students who are proficient in both math and ELA on either the SAT, the AP assessment, or the ACT assessment. Next, we'll talk a little bit about what the star ratings mean. You can see the definitions that are there beginning with 5 stars and working our way down to schools that would receive a 1-star rating. How are the star ratings determined? There are a number of factors, as I mentioned earlier. We talked about the academic and student support measures. The performance of student subgroups is also part of the accountability system. Student subgroups include racial and ethnic groups, students with disabilities, English learners, and students who are economically disadvantaged. The scores for those students are looked at separately in conjunction with the scores for the entire school. The final rating is determined by the lowest score received across these measures. It's not based on an overall score, and we'll take a look at how the scores are calculated in just a minute when we look at our own report cards. So how were BWRSD schools rated for 2022? We'll start with Colt Andrews. So you can see at the top, Colt Andrews is a 3-star, has a 3-star rating. And if you look at the squares that are circled in red and you see the red arrow to the left, the star ratings are based on the area with the lowest score. So in this case, they are a 3-star school because of the rating for achievement and growth in English language arts and mathematics. And if I'm using acronyms that you would like clarification on, please feel free to jump in. Colt Andrews School was a 4-star rating in 2021 and now is at a 3-star level. It received 2 out of 4 points for ELA proficiency and 2 out of 4 points for math proficiency. And ELA growth and math growth, it received 3 out of 3 points for a total of 10 points. You'll also notice at the bottom of the slide that Colt Andrews has been identified, and it's hard to see, it's tiny print, but it basically says that Colt Andrews has been identified for targeted support and improvement for a student subgroup. In this case, it's that Colt Andrews needs some additional focus on increasing achievement for students with disabilities in both math and ELA. It's important to remember that the data is based on the results from 2022, and a number of improvements are already in place since this time to address this subgroup. Next, we'll go to Gutierrez Elementary. Gutierrez maintained their 4-star rating. Their achievement in ELA, they received 3 points out of 4, and in math, they received 2 points out of 4. And I'll have to say they were very, very close in mathematics, but just a couple of points off. There were no subgroups identified for Gutierrez, and they were really very close to being a 5-star school. So we're sure that with the continued hard work of teachers and students and families at home, that they'll be able to get that rating up to 5-star. Ucole Elementary School maintained their 3-star rating. They received 2 out of 4 points for ELA, 2 out of 4 points for math. ELA growth was 1 out of 3 points. However, in math, they received 3 out of 3 points for their students' growth in mathematics over the course of the 2 years. Also on this slide, you'll see their English language proficiency level was 2 out of 4 points. Ucole was also identified for targeted support and improvement for students with disabilities, so for that particular subgroup of students. Next, we go to Rockwell. Rockwell was 5 stars last year and has dropped down to 4 stars this year. They received 2 out of 3 points for ELA and math for exceeds expectations. So this is the area, if you'll notice on the slide, where they have the lowest score, and that's the second to last column. Other than that, they would have been a 5-star school. So the areas that they need a little attention in are students who exceed the expectations. They did receive 3 out of 3 points for their suspension rate. However, they received 2 out of 3 points for student attendance. 17.4% of Rockwell students were chronically absent, and a school needs 15% or less to receive these 3 points. Rockwell was not identified for targeted support and intervention. Then we go on to the middle school. The middle school maintained their rating of 3 stars. They received 2 out of 4 points for ELA proficiency, 2 out of 4 points for math. For growth, they received 2 out of 3 for ELA and 2 out of 3 for math. They also received 2 out of 3 points for attendance. 36% of students were chronically absent, and they received 1 out of 3 points for their suspension rate. In addition, 2 out of 3 points were received for the percentage of students exceeded expectations. The middle school was identified for targeted support and improvement for achievement and growth for students with disabilities and English learners. And last but not least, we have the high school. And the high school was our only school that increased their rating during this time. They increased from 3 stars to 4 stars. They received 3 out of 4 points for their ELA proficiency, 2 out of 4 points for their math proficiency, and for growth, they received 3 out of 3 points for ELA and 3 out of 3 points for math. They received 2 out of 3 points for their attendance. 33.9% of students at the high school were chronically absent. For graduation, they received 4 out of 5 points. And then under Diploma Plus, they received 2 out of 3 points for the Commissioner's Seal. That's proficiency in both math and ELA. And for post-secondary success, we had 30% of students who earned AP credits on the AP assessment, and 12% of students earned college credit, so the school receives points for that. The high school was identified for targeted support and improvement for achievement and growth of students with disabilities. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we are kind of backtracking, going back in time, since this data is based on our state assessment results from May 2022 and over the summer. And this school year, we have a lot of things in place which are targeting these same areas. The last slide, and then I'll open it up to questions, is just how will the school report card ratings be used? They'll be shared with families and community via school newsletters, the website, and open house. They'll be presented to school improvement teams to inform improvement planning. They'll be used in conjunction with the most recent school data, our iReady math and ELA data, looking at beginning and middle of year data and growth. And we also have subgroup data that we'll continue to monitor. We'll also be looking at our current attendance and suspension rates, our projected graduation rates, credentials, college credit rates, and also for further analysis of our curriculum implementation and multi-tiered systems of support to make sure that all students have access to core instruction of the standards and the support needed to be successful. And lastly, we'll use this information to inform our FY24 school budgets and the district budget, as well as federal grant priorities. So that's a summary of how we'll use the data moving forward in conjunction with other data that we have about our schools. And lastly, there are some additional resources here if you want to take a deeper dive into the RIDE accountability system. There is a technical bulletin that has all of the specific calculations on how the schools are ranked. I'm happy to address any questions that you have, and I'm sure that Superintendent Riley, who was heavily involved in a lot of this, would be able to help out as well.
Thank you, Dr. Sana. Any questions or comments from the committee? Carly, this is Reish.
Thank you, Dr. Santa, for the information and for presenting that to us. I'm sure I'm not the only one that was kind of aghast when I heard the chronic absentee rates for both the middle and the high school. I know that there have been other community members that have also been concerned. I'm assuming that has changed since we initially had those numbers. And I would venture to say that I assume a lot of that has to do with student mental health. What other additional information do you have or updates around attendance or plans for addressing that? Thank you.
So last year's attendance data, as we all know, was impacted by a number of things, from COVID, from families keeping students home, from mental health issues, I'm sure. But we have put a number of initiatives in place. So probably the most important one is what we're calling tiers of support. So we have a document that was created by administration and myself and the director of MTSS, and we're spelling out what are the activities that need to happen at the beginning of the year and throughout the year for all students. And that's going from the principal to the teacher, getting information out to families on the importance of school attendance, making sure that we have a system in place for families that need some additional information and support on getting their children to school. We've also involved our school social workers to make phone calls, to reach out to families, to find out what the barriers are and how we can support them. So that's all tier 1. At tier 2, we have a letter that goes home that the minute that the student is 10% or more of the school year chronically absent, it's a formal letter expressing that, and with a follow-up phone call for asking how we can support the family. And then it progresses to tier 3, where that is another letter with ongoing progress monitoring. We've also been working with Aspen, our student information system, so that we can have better access to data so that we can monitor it on a regular basis. And we will receive notification when a student is getting close to that chronic absence rate. So those are the things that we have planned and already implemented. Families may have already been receiving those letters. They are going out through Aspen. They're also being sent out through the schools with follow-up phone calls. So we're hoping that all of that, especially the increased awareness of the importance of school attendance, will make a difference.
Thank you. I wanted to compliment the district administration on addressing that and doing so in such a comprehensive way. I also wanted to compliment publicly the newsletter that I received today, kind of talking more about MTSS. I thought that was really important and very impactful, and I think will help a lot of families understand sort of the umbrella of services that our district provides.
Anybody else? Sorry, Mrs. Brawl.
I just was wondering if, do any of the schools have any incentives for, better attendance or?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I know in the past we've done a number of things, but I don't know specifically. I'm not sure if you know Superintendent Riley, if they've mentioned anything.
I'm sorry.
Incentives for good attendance.
So I do know, and forgive me, the other principals, if I don't know this off the top of my head, but I know the middle school has started doing some work around attendance and announcing attendance for each of the grade levels and kind of creating a little competition and incentive. I do think too that part of it we did right before the holidays, that we had a rough streak there with flu and COVID and some respiratory illness. I'm going to say this, I look at attendance every day. And from the holidays to today, our attendance has been really good. Excellent. I've been looking, so people got healthy. We're having a good comeback to school, and attendance has been really much better after break than it was prior to break. So I'm just hoping for a break, some more sunshine like we've had the last couple of days, and the hope that our students are, feeling better and we're away from all of those winter ailments that keep students out. But as Dr. Santa mentioned, we are trying to stay ahead of it and talking to parents and trying to raise some awareness and commitment. There's also a public attendance tool that you can see daily. It's called the Student Attendance Leaderboard. You can log on at any time and see where your school ranks for the previous day. So we have some work to do. We're not always at the top of the leaderboard, but I know even our principals look at it in terms of each other and say, we were ahead of you today. We've been behind you. And I know Mr. Morel gets particularly proud when he actually does a little better than the elementary schools, because that's like a good marker for him, that his attendance is high. But so it has been better since after the break. And I do think some of it is also between the previous years and the struggle where we were saying to people, if your child's sick, keep them home, we have developed some bad habits. We've helped create those bad habits of, if you have a little sniffle, folks have stayed home. And what we're encouraging now is we're more familiar with those signs and symptoms of COVID than we were when all of that was happening. We've got plenty of free testing available. So if you're worried about that, you can do the testing. But if it's negative, we really need your child to come to school. We're trying to get back in that routine of, unless your child has a fever or they're vomiting or they have some other serious illness, they should be in school. A sniffle isn't a reason to stay home anymore, even though that was the message we were giving, a year, 2 years ago. So we have to kind of move away from what we were doing when we really didn't understand COVID as well. Believe me, not that I think we really understand it perfectly now, but we've moved away from staying home when you just had like a sniffle or a little cough and coming to school unless there's something more serious. And then our nurses and our team are happy to support if parents have a question or they need their child to be tested for them. We still have access to all of the testing and can do any of that if a parent's concerned. But we've got to help break the bad habits we helped create during all that time and move forward. But attendance has been, I'm grateful to the last week and a half or so, it's been much better than before break. So it's encouraging.
Great. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Mr. McGovern.
Thank you very much. I thought the presentation was very informative. The one explaining the 3 buckets of kind of how we're measuring this was very helpful for myself. Do we have a plan to maybe share this with the parents in the district to kind of just say, here's how this is broken down a little more than just some data in the online?
Mm-hmm. The schools will be sharing this with their school improvement teams and PTOs, and we'll be posting this on our district website as well as school websites. So, and I can include perhaps some of my notes that as I'm talking through, I know it wasn't all on the slide, so we're happy to provide that as well. One of the links that I have up there is called Accountability for Parents, and it's a nice 1-page document that gives some good information.
Thank you.
So,
Is there a difference between an unexcused or an excused absence, or absence is just an absence?
an absence is just an absence, and that's one of our conversations is, are we defining an excused absence appropriately for families? So we have a little more work to do around communication, and that's one of the points that we've been discussing. But no, an absence is an absence.
Okay. And just one more maybe for Superintendent Riley. The student attendance leaderboard, is there a teacher attendance leaderboard?
They do not, they do it at the end of the year, but they don't do a daily update. You can see, so when you go to that accountability page, one of the other components is staff attendance, but it's only for schools that have more than 20 staff. So not all of our staff shows up because some of our schools are small, but you can see the chronic absentee rate for teacher absenteeism there from last year for middle and high school, maybe Cole. I'm trying to think who's big enough, but I know you can't see it for Rockwell or Gutierrez. They're too small. I'm not sure about Holt, Andrews, and the other, but those are listed on there also.
Yeah, I would encourage you to go to the Rhode Island Department of Ed. If you just type in school report cards, there's so much more information than what I presented tonight for each school. There's quite a bit of data behind that that is all accessible if people want to go through and look at all of the different tabs.
Thank you. Ms. Almeida.
Thank you. This is for Dr. Santa. I know you just informed Adam that the process for the parents will be given out to the student improvement, the PTO, the website. Can a link or something be mentioned in the newsletter? Because I know parents probably go, since that's emailed to them, they're more likely to probably read it there than individually go to the website.
Yep, one-stop shopping.
We could do, I would say we could send out a little email with just this component with some of the backup of the notes and those links and I'll blast, because it really impacts all of the schools. So we could send something out with this to everyone.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the committee? Anybody from the public have a question or comment on the presentation for Dr. Sana? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Sana.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So now we move on to the consent agenda, where all items under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the school committee and enacted by one motion. There is one item on the consent agenda, the minutes from the last meeting. Does anybody wish to pull those from the consent agenda? No? Great. Can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Great. Consent agenda accepted. Now we move on to discussion and/or action items. The first item A is to approve policy BDE, subcommittees of the school committee, as recommended by Superintendent Riley for a second reading.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor or discussion? Does anybody have any follow-up from the last meeting? Any further questions or comments? Do you want to address Mr. Hewitt's thing about the naming of the, because the one that's on the website, we're changing the numbering because.
I was misbehaving and speaking to the reporter, Mr. Hewitt, but I will try to address what.
What is the BDE policy?
So the BDE, the appropriate one is Subcommittee of the School Committee. It was previously called BCE, and BDE was just student hearings, but student hearings actually also falls under BDE and is listed in the reference. So the old BDE, which is on there now, will come off. It's already addressed in BDER. And this policy, which is supposed to be BDE, was previously misnamed BCE. I'm working on correcting them as we go through them.
Is the BDER on the website? I didn't see it.
But once we approve these new policies, if that's what the will of the committee is, then the website will be updated.
Okay, the only reason I question it is you've indicated in your preparatory remarks to the meeting that it would be preferred if public speaking addressed items on the agenda.
Correct, and that's why I asked Superintendent Riley to address your comment.
Very difficult to address items on the agenda when the items on the agenda are not really known by the public in terms of the meat and substance of it.
Okay, thank you. So can I have a motion to accept, to approve policy BDE as recommended by Superintendent Riley?
We already do.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. Item B, approve policy BDER, subcommittees of the school committee as recommended by Superintendent Riley for a second meeting. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make an amendment to this motion to put back the budget, in budget subcommittee, the facilities piece of the subcommittee.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
All in favor of the amendment?
I have
Aye.
a discussion first.
Oh, discussion, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know, I
Yeah, discussion on the amendment?
So if I could, I don't think you were here at our previous
I was
meeting when we
not.
discussed this. So the reason we removed facilities is because facilities is not in the purview of the school committee. Remember, it's budget,
Right.
policy, superintendent. And facilities, you will always see all of the capital projects regardless. So we bring an annual capital plan to you, and of course, any bids that have to be approved always come to the school committee in terms of facilities. So the building committee will be managing that big 5-year capital plan, but annually, you'll get a 1-year capital plan that would come to the committee. So I removed facilities. That's not typically a subcommittee I've had before as a superintendent, and so that's why it came off. I just want you to know why it came off. But if there's ever a concern or an issue, that's always, of course, as with anything, you can just let me know, and I can speak with Frank and make sure that we address whatever it is. But that's why it was removed from there, just so that you have
Madam
that
Chair?
background.
Mrs. McBride?
Yes, you know, I voted no on this last time, and I'll resubmit my arguments. The things that have come to my mind since then have been things like doing the KMS outdoor classroom during lunch, where the parents worked with the superintendent and worked with our facilities director. They came to the budget subcommittee, facility subcommittee. They asked about it. We asked them to check off all their boxes. They came back. They told us how much it was going to cost and where the money was coming from and what they were going to put up. And then we asked our budget person if we had enough money to maintain that. And all that kind of stuff disappears because all you're talking about is budget. When in fact, we have a subset of facilities, which is just plain facilities. And so when you do, for example, the garden at Gutierrez, they did the garden and then there was nobody to keep it up. And we ended up being responsible for that. And then the parents came back and decided that they would, or whoever it was, that they would keep it up again. But those are our responsibilities. And we also have a responsibility to the towns that we lease the buildings from, because part of our lease says that we must maintain those buildings. And that means the stained glass window at Colt Andrews that had to be repaired. That's not a capital expense. That's our expense. And we have to know about going through the Colt Fund and about talking to our budget people about whether we can afford to do this year or next year. So I'm concerned that we're lumping everything into this large capital fund when there's a significant amount of things that are going on a daily basis that we are responsible for, and I would like to know about as a school committee member, rather than have no knowledge. And if I don't get it, then I don't have it, and I don't know. The joke was, I got a couple of emails about trees growing out of the gutters in Andrews. And the superintendent tells me that that was a limb that fell down in the gutter. That's great. I got to find that out. That's part of facilities. That was the whole crux of my argument last time, and it's still the same this time. I agree that we need a building committee, but I also agree that we need facilities under budget for all of the smaller things that PTOs and students come to us with that will cost us money. And they come to us. And what you're saying is they need to come to us, I guess, here, and then we need to turn to budget, and then budget has to come back to us, and they have to explain, and it's much easier at the subcommittee level. I just think, and I respect the ruling of the subcommittee. If the subcommittee says, yes, we've investigated all of this, and yes, we can afford this, then why wouldn't I vote yes here at this table?
Thank you, Mrs. McBride. Anybody else?
I'm sorry, I just want to.
The superintendent and I've had
No,
discussions
I just
about
want to
this.
be clear about one of the things you said. So you vote on the capital, but I was not presuming that anyone would come here for those other incidentals of facilities. That's my responsibility and the director of facilities job to budget for those things. So if someone comes to us and says there's a limb in it's our responsibility. It's the facilities director's responsibility to make sure someone gets up there and takes that off. That wouldn't come to the school committee for your approval. So when I say that the building committee isn't going to be dealing with regular facilities maintenance, those are the capital projects.
But,
So just to be
but
clear.
I think that we are responsible for regular facilities management, and I think that we should know what's going on. I just do.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mrs.
So I apologize, I was not here at the last meeting, so I did not hear what, and I did email over my questions, and I apologize for sending them over yesterday. But I sent over questions in regards to, after reading the policy, what my concerns were. I'm going to give some for instances. Many times the facilities takes up a very large portion of our budget meeting, such as the KMS gym floor that was supposed to be complete but wasn't. What or where would are those now capital projects that would go to the building committee? Or are those still going to be under, now, or would these just stay under the director of facilities? And then how do we make sure they're getting done? And I'm not saying with you as the superintendent, but there must have been a reason that facilities committee was put into place originally. And again, I've been on the budget and facilities subcommittee now for 2 years, and that probably takes up a very large portion of our our budget meeting, the gym floor, the light at the bathroom, and it's the showers. I went back and looked. The showers at the high school in the boys' locker room. Would these things be reported to us monthly? Would we be receiving these updates on these projects? And then my other thing, and I know that we're different than other districts. We are a regional school district. Marge brought up the fact that, unlike most districts, we lease the buildings from the towns, and it's the school committee's responsibility to maintain facilities and oversee the budget. So unlike most communities, we are different. We're a regional board. We have 2 communities to deal with. And so I do think that the facilities is keeping facilities in the budget meeting to me is important. But I am interested to know how those things would be reported out. The boys' bathroom, would those be capital? Would those be, would those go to the building subcommittee? Or would those then just be internal and we would get reports?
The building subcommittee will work on the 5-year plan.
The necessity of construction.
Correct. Once that's complete, what comes out of that is an annual set of projects that have to be done for 5 years in a row. You still have to approve each year as they come. You approve the whole overall 5 years, but then at budget time, so we don't have one right now because we don't have a new 5-year capital plan yet. But next year at budget season, what you'll get is the budget and a capital budget to approve. And anything on that capital budget, you'll be updated regularly on. So for example, that boys' locker room is in the capital plan. That's why you saw it on that monthly strip. The roof for the terrace was in the capital plan, so you saw it on that monthly update. So you'll still receive in your correspondence a monthly update on those capital projects that are on the list that you approve at budget season. So you've been doing a whole list of them that we've been trying to get through. And we're still behind, so you'll still see a few more of those because we're still catching up on some of those projects. Once the new 5-year plan is approved, you will get an annual list of capital projects that can be reported out on monthly. Now, I'm going to tell you, most of those end up getting done in the summer. So there's probably not a lot to see in the winter until breaks. We do some big work during Christmas break, some during February break, some during April break, but the bulk of it will happen in the summer. So you'll kind of see that as projects go through that process. And I'll just say, it's not just regional districts. No district owns their buildings. So in Portsmouth, we didn't own the buildings. The town owns all the buildings. We use them.
Now, my other concern is RFPs in contracts.
Yep.
So we've also, in our history, sorry, didn't know if that was a fire alarm.
Fire alarm's much louder than that.
Okay, oh, it's the door. I didn't know, we've fallen behind on some of our contracts. The landscaping contract, for instance. How will those be reported out, RFPs and contracts?
They still have to get approved by the budget.
So all
Any-
RFPs and contracts would go
That are
to
over the threshold in our policy.
They would go to the budget.
Yep.
I just like one more thing to add. Facilities just isn't buildings. Facilities is buses, cars, equipment that we own. We've always had a separate budget for that. And I'm not saying that just because we've always done it. We have to continue to do it. I'm just saying that as a matter of course, we have, as you said, a 5-year plan, and in year 1, we replace the director of facilities vehicle. In year 2, we replace one of the vans. In year 3, we replace another van. Those are all different kinds of facility things that we're doing that I don't believe belong in a building committee. A building committee is about.
No, the building committee's only that 5-year.
So I think facilities belongs here. Buildings doesn't belong here. Facilities belong here.
Any other question, comment, discussion? Seeing none, the motion on the floor is to amend the motion to approve policy BDE to add back facilities. I have a motion and I have a second. All in favor of this amendment?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay.
Nay.
The amendment does not carry. So we're back to the original motion to approve policy BDE, Subcommittee of the School Committee, as recommended by Superintendent Riley.
I'm sorry, BDER. This is just a
BDER.
reference.
I still have
to
one
the-
more question.
BDER. Yeah, so we can have discussion now on the original motion.
Yes, that's on the policy subcommittee. We took out curriculum. I don't have a problem with that. I understand what Mr. Riley was explaining to me. The only problem I have is knowledge, so I need to know. I would like a report on what our curriculum is.
It's all posted on our website.
I would like a report of what our curriculum is, a printed report of what our curriculum is.
Okay.
And I'd like to see that every year because I think I should know what we're, I'm not talking to you about what you're choosing to teach. I'm not asking you to allow me
No, you're
to
asking
tell
about the
you.
curriculum.
I'm asking for
printed.
the information on paper that directs our curriculum, that's all. Okay, thanks.
Any other question or comment on the original motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to approve policy BDER as recommended by Superintendent Riley? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the standardized monthly financial reports. For those of you who don't know, our CFO, Mr. Ferrucci, retired at the end of last year, and we are actively recruiting somebody new. So in the meantime, our superintendent continues to wear many hats and is wearing the CFO hat. So I will hand over to the superintendent.
Thank you. So I tried to keep this report as similar as possible to the previous one, but Mr. Ferrucci did create some of his own Excel reports. But what you can see is I pull our reports from our IB system, which is our budget system. So you're getting this data right out of the system that we're using. So you'll see, I'm sorry, they were clipped when I put them together. I'll have to find a better way to keep them. But there are two revenue sheets, and then you'll see all of our expenses. And if you look at the totals, which are on the first page in my memo, you'll see that all we've done, our year-to-date was till December 8th last time, so this is only an abbreviated version. It's just December 8th through the 31st, because Mr. Ferrucci tried to catch up to where he was as of when he left. So if you still have your last months, you'll see that there's not much of an increase in year-to-date actuals from the previous amount, because it's only been about 3 weeks worth of expenses. So right now, we are still on target for budget. I do want to let you know that Mr. Ferrucci had already noticed that we were short on out-of-district tuition funds and also in transportation. We are expecting more state aid than we originally budgeted for. It looks like that should neutralize the increase, but I am working with Mary King to get an up-to-date of where we are in FY23. While she's working on FY24, I'm working on our updated FY23. I'm also wrapping up the audit with our audit firm. I did have to ask for an extension. Mr. Ferrucci wasn't able to complete it before he left. So I have wrapped up the last bits with our business department, who has been helping me quite a bit. We are pretty much wrapped up. We've given everything to the auditors that they need, and they feel confident they can complete it by January 31st. We've got an approved extension from the auditor for that. So we should be on target to wrap that up by the end of January. And then hopefully I will have a status of our FY23 at that next meeting, and then we'll be able to start sharing with you the info for FY24.
Any questions or comments for the superintendent on the financial reports?
Is it safe to say if we're halfway through the fiscal year that some of these high numbers, about 50%, that's where we should be?
Right.
So give or take.
Right, so you
we're in
can
line.
see that it looks like in our salary line that we're in the hole. However, we haven't asked for any of our money from our consolidated grants yet. Mr. Ferrucci hadn't made a request to RIDE yet for any of those funding. Quite a bit of that is staffing in our IDEA grant, our Title I grant, and our Title II grant. So once we request our funds, which I think at the last balance, all of this isn't staffing, but RIDE owes us about $1 million that we haven't requested yet. So that should help neutralize most of this.
But as far as undesignated general fund, that's roughly, because it's halfway, that's
Right.
some correlation.
Yeah, we're not sitting on any money. That's,
No, just like,
That's
so
about
quarter of the
halfway
year,
through.
halfway through the
Yep.
year, what kind of lines up that way.
yes.
Any other questions for Superintendent Riley on the financial reports? Great, thank you. Moving on to item D, which is our legislative priorities. We discussed this last time. We are going to have a breakfast with our state delegation, and details of that will be posted once it's confirmed. We do want to meet with them on a regular basis so that we can inform them about what our priorities are as a district, and also so they can inform us about what's going on at the State House that is important to us as well. Superintendent Riley, do you want to talk? I mean, we discussed the transportation issue, which is the number one thing that we want to bring. Mrs. Thibodeau.
So again, I apologize, I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I think that two things that I think are missing from other important priorities would be to review the Enabling Act.
Also on
And-
our list, thank you. I just didn't write that down.
And the regional bonus. So I think those two things should be included in the legislative requests.
Completely agree. I raised the enabling legislation last time.
Yep.
The two things at the bottom were suggested by a school committee member, and they're actually things that we can discuss as a committee. They don't need to go to our state delegation. So at a later date, we are going to discuss those items as a committee. Superintendent Riley's recommendation, which I agree with, is to bring a small list of very important items. So if we're bringing those three items, the transportation, the enabling legislation, and the regional bonus, I think that's a good conversation for us to have with them, because they're our priorities. Yeah. Anybody else have anything to add? Great. The next thing I am just going to read for the benefit of the public. Vice Chair McGovern and I worked with the committee to put together the subcommittees. We tried our best to give everybody something that they wanted, and also obviously to match the juggle of sort of different time constraints and skills, obviously, and interest. The policy subcommittee will be chaired by Mrs. Reish, and the members will be Mr. Jackson and Mrs. Bullard. The budget subcommittee will be chaired by our treasurer, Mrs. Almeida, and the members will be Mrs. Thibodeau and Mr. McGovern. The personnel and contract negotiations subcommittee will be chaired by me, Nikki Piper, and the members will be Mr. Jackson and Mrs. Reish. The health and wellness committee will be chaired by Mrs. Bullard, and the members will be Mrs. Cabral and me, Nikki Piper. Student hearings, I will chair. We hope that it never has to meet, but this subcommittee is unusual in that if we do have to pull the subcommittee together, the chair calls in two other school committee members so that they can rotate as needed. The building committee will be co-chaired, Mr. McGovern and the superintendent, and the other school committee member on the building committee will be Mrs. Thibodeau. I also want to mention that Mrs. McBride is not listed at her request, and she has earned the right to sit out subcommittees if she so chooses.
Thank you.
Anybody have questions or comments on subcommittees? Okay, great. The final item on our agenda is to look at the proposed 2023 to 2024 school calendar. Superintendent.
Sure, and this is just a draft, so we're not looking for a vote. I want to get your feedback, share a first draft, and hear any concerns from all of you before we start to finalize. There is no model calendar yet. I did send them this one in case they were looking for one, so that we can make sure that we are aligned in terms of February break and April break with the districts around us, both for our student benefit, but for our staff, because we have staff who live in other districts. So we want to try to make sure that's aligned. So that has not come out yet, but I hope my email prodded them to think about this and that we can get a model calendar relatively soon. So you'll see that February break and April break are aligned with President's Day, and the April break, which is typically aligned with Patriots Day in Massachusetts. That's when the Massachusetts breaks are. That's when these have been put in the hopes that they stand. I did not build in the PD days. I just tagged them at the beginning for right now until we figure out what we'd like to do with them. And we haven't really had an opportunity to sit down with BWEA and talk about them. So I didn't build those in. But with this calendar, not having built in the PD days yet, it looks like if we started school on the Tuesday after Labor Day, we could end school 180th day would be June 14th. So the way Labor Day falls, it falls very neatly into this calendar. So I just say that the last piece hanging out there is really working with our partners in BWEA to figure out what we'd like to do, what would work best for our PD days, and then making sure that the state recommended calendars, February and April breaks, align with what we've put on this calendar so that we don't have any different vacations from everyone else.
Correct.
Is there anything that stands out to folks in this calendar that, and you can always get back to me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for cross-referencing two important days, different religious holidays with important school dates. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any initial thoughts on this draft?
I just have one question. I thought veterans, oh, because it's on a Sunday. Okay.
It's on the Sunday, so they're observing it on that Monday.
Mrs. Almeida.
Thank you.
This year, this year that we're in, we started at the end of, we started early this year, right?
We started just before. We started August. I think students' first day was August 30th.
So is it because the way Labor Day falls? Okay.
Yeah, and also, so what we try to do is map out our 180 days so
Right.
that, like, for example, if this had worked out when we did all the math, that the last day of school was a Monday, we try never to do that. So
Yeah.
we would have
Right,
tried to
yeah,
look
yeah,
at what we could do.
Okay.
But it just works out, again, neatly the way Labor Day falls, that starting on that Tuesday, we'd still end on the 14th, pending we didn't have more than the 3 accepted snow days that are allowed for virtual days.
Thank you.
And again, this is just a draft, so if anyone thinks of something else or they have more time to look at it, just get back to me. And then I'm going to reach out before our next meeting to the state to see if they have a date when they might send out their calendar so that then you can vote on it and we can publish this. Just because we do have families who plan ahead and like to plan for summer vacations this year and then also some of the breaks. Believe it or not, we have already gotten phone calls.
Yeah. I do think it's important to try and see that state calendar for the sake of our teachers and for staff and for folks who have kids in multiple districts. So thank you for pushing that. Anything else on the school calendar? Can I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all, and thank you for being here.